now that we have the back basically done, we're going to start working on a different part of the car. So we're going to press Alt H to unhide this, A to deselect everything. And the part that I'd like to work on now is this front part here. There's some detail that we can add here. So I'm just going to select this face, press period to focus in so that we're focused on this area. And what we want to make is this little shape here and this hole. So one thing I noticed about the reference and the real thing, we're just going to press 3 to go to side view and press Z. So in this reference it has these 2 points perfectly in line, but if you look at the real car, this top point basically ends here, and if you were to follow your mouse down, you'll notice that it ends basically halfway where this bottom one is. So this bottom one's supposed to be a lot farther out, as far as I can tell, than this top one. And another thing that I noticed on this is you have this pretty extreme angle downward in this reference in comparison to the light. So if you look at where the light, this little light would be, the angle of this compared to the angle of this is pretty extreme. But if you look again at the real thing, the angle of this is a little bit less steep than the angle of this. So this does go downward a bit more than the angle of the light, but not nearly as much as what this reference is showing. So we're going to go to vertex select, and we're going to correct both of those issues. So we want less of an angle, and we want this to be further this way so that it's not as far out. So we're going to select this vertex, G, and do the same here. Select this, press G. So we want this one basically, when you go straight down, to be roughly halfway. I'm going to bring it maybe a little more than half, something like that. And since we move these points, we want to move these as well so that we keep even spacing between these. So we just want to try to keep a better edge flow. And I'm going to vertex slide this one over so that we can get that shape for where the hole is going to be. It's supposed to be curved sort of like this. As you can see here, it goes, like this. So I'm just going to bring this one in a little more to make this whole area a little smaller, and just adjust your mesh as you need to. And we're just trying to keep a basically straight line here, and I guess I should probably try to keep a straighter line here too. But this is going to be the start of our whole area here. But before we go further, what we want to do is, now that we've moved these vertices, you can see this one is really far into the car. Like, this actually needs to be pulled out. So we want to make these adjustments first. We want to pull some of these points out, the ones that we moved at least. Like, we moved this one as well, this one right here. So you just want to reposition them so that it's not going to look too terrible, so it still looks relatively okay. And now what we want to do is go to edge select. We're going to just press 3 on the number pad, and we're going to select these 3 edges, press subdivide, hold Alt, right click, press Q to edge slide. If you don't have your thing set up, go ahead and set it up. I'm just going to press, see, it looks like the spacing's actually not even, but I was going to even it out. I was just thinking about evening it out, but when you look at this, like, the bottom actually has more distance between. At the bottom there's a bigger space where this hole is, and at the top it gets smaller. So Leaving it like this is actually okay, but I'm going to move it in a little more, just slightly. So this is good for that. That's where the hole is going to be. And we're going to take these edges here, and actually before we do that, one thing I did to try to make this a little better was at this wheel arch, you can see it comes down, and in this picture it's not the easiest to see, but the wheel arch comes down, and this bevel where the wheel arch is actually curves to where this bottom part is. There's another picture here somewhere that shows it. I think this one shows it okay. So the wheel arch comes down and curves to the bottom. It actually doesn't continue to the bottom like it shows in the picture, or like it shows in the reference. Like it kind of has it continuing further down, but it actually doesn't do that. It continues down to this point and then curves over. So we have some edges here that we're going to need to get rid of eventually, but before we do that, we want to create that beveled effect along this area here. So we're going to do Control R, add in a loop cut on this inside, and just bring it fairly close. And we can't do it for the outside, but we're going to want to do something similar. So we're in Edge Select. We're going to select this edge, C for Circle Select, and you're just going to select all the edges that go from this part all the way around the wheel arch, like this. So you can use whatever selection method you want, just make sure you're only getting these edges like I'm doing all the way around the wheel arch. And that's going to be good, I guess. I don't think we need that one. So we're just going to subdivide. Then we're going to hold Alt, right click, Q, then E. Bring this close. The reason we didn't need this one is because eventually this is going to curve down like this. So this edge is just going to flow into this area. And we really don't even need this point down here either, but that's fine. We're just going to leave it for now. So now we have the basic stuff set up. Looks a little weird for now, it's okay. And another thing you can see is this little strangeness here. The reason that's there is because we're going to have to go to Vertex Select. It's because it created an extra vertex here. There's this little triangle, so if we select these two, Alt M at center, that gets rid of that, so we don't have that problem anymore. So we're going to press 3 on the number pad, Tab for edit mode, Z for wireframe. We're going to go to Edge Select and get these edges. Subdivide, Alt right click, Q to bring this up. And this comes to a point, so we're going to just merge this vertex up. So we're going to go to Vertex Select and merge this bottom one to the top one. And do the same for the bottom. Select these edges, subdivide, Alt right click, Q, and then merge this to the bottom. So now we have this. We're going to go to Face Select, get these two faces, and this is the part where we're going to pull it in towards the car. So look at your reference, like the bottom's pulled in just a little bit here and just a little bit here in the top. So we're going to do that first. Just pull this in a little. Not too much. That's probably okay. Then we're going to press delete and choose faces to get rid of that face and create that hole. But you'll notice that this back part is actually pulled in further than the front part. So you see how the front is in front of this part here. So this part's pulled in further, so we're going to have to pull that part in further. So go to Edge Select, select these edges, pull it in even further until we get a hole like this. And another thing you'll notice is that this part ends up here, and then the inner part ends below it. And the same here, the bottom part ends right here, and then this part ends above it. So this one needs to be pulled down, and this one needs to be pulled up. So we're going to go to vertex select, select this vertex, shift select this one, and press S to scale, and then Z for the Z axis, and just pull it up and down like that. And then you can just adjust them individually if you want to whatever you think fits the reference. This part's going to be difficult to correct the shading, so the shading that looks bad right now, don't worry about it for now. We're just going to continue improving on this as we go. So for now we're just going to save it. We're going to go to File, Save, and we're going to continue working on the shading as well as everything else. So to get rid of some of the bad shading on the top, we're going to go to Edge Select, select these edges, actually not that one, just these two, press Subdivide, Alt right click, Q to bring this down. We're going to select this one and press J to join, and that'll get rid of some of the shading issues right here. Not all of them apparently, but some of them. And we're going to do something similar to the bottom. We can select these and do subdivide, alt right click and bring, well, that didn't work because it selected the wrong edges, so you just want to select these two edges, Q, bring it up, and then merge this up here to create this triangle and improve the shading a little. We still have some shading problems here, so we're going to go to Edge Select, select these two edges, subdivide, alt right click, press Q. You can already see the shading improving. And we're going to again merge this up so that we still only have one point there and the shading is still improving. We're getting there. You'll notice we have these n-gons here, like we have these extra vertices here, so we can just do Control R, add in a loop cut in the bottom, add in a loop cut at the top, and then join these with J. That'll get rid of some more problems. And to improve things even further, we're going to add in some more geometry here. So I think I just went, actually I think I can just do Control R, add in a loop cut here, bring it close, and then select these two vertices, press J to join, so that'll get some better shading there. Still have some weirdness here. I think that may just be because of the way we have this. Like this is probably out too far, needs to be in a bit more, and then these would need to be in a bit more as well. Just make sure you get all of them. I'll adjust that later, work on the minor details later. So we can select these, do subdivide, alt right click, Q to bring this down, so we'll improve the shading here too. Merge these so that we still have that one point. So it's starting to look a little better. We can save this. Another thing we can do is add some depth to this. Like you can see, there's a little bit of depth here, and there would be like this extrusion inward for this other part. So we're going to alt right click to get this, press F to make a face, I to inset, and just do a small inset. and then E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring this back some and forward some. Press delete, choose faces. Something I should have done before that actually, so we're just going to press Ctrl Z until we get rid of all that, is select these two vertices and do Ctrl Shift B to add a vertex bevel. That will just help get this curve to be more curved instead of the way it was. So we're going to select this vertex that we created, hold Shift, select this one, Alt M at last, and then do the same here. We're just merging those to get rid of them because they created extra vertices we didn't need. And now we want to do Alt right click, F to make a face, I to inset, do a very small inset, E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring this back, and then forward a little, and then press delete, choose faces. So that gives us a little more depth here. You can see it's not totally two-dimensional like it was. This interface though, or this inner part, I think needs to be moved forward some. So I'm going to deselect these. So we just have this front one and pull this to be a little smaller so it's not such not as big as it was. So this is good for now. We can still improve on this a bit, but we're just going to do File and Save. One thing we're going to do to improve this, like we can see how much distance we have here, not a whole lot. But if we look at some of these pictures, like this one, you can see that the back part, or the part that's closest to the wheel, there's actually quite a bit of distance there. A lot more than what we have, so we're going to take this part and move it in more. So we're just going to press Z for wireframe, right click on one of these points, C for circle select, and just start selecting all the points on this inner area. And then we're going to pull it in more to match closer to what it looks like in the reference, where it's actually pulled in quite a bit. This back part is pulled in quite a bit. And I think this front part actually needs to be moved in a little too. So we're going to do the same process. Select one point and then use C for circle select to make sure that you get all these front points and pull them in some more. Until you get something that you think looks closer to this. That might be a little too far. So next what we want to do is fix this. And we also want to make sure that this curve continues down like this, like we talked about earlier. How this curve comes down and goes like that. So to do that, we're going to add in another loop cut. So we're going to do Control R, add in a loop cut here, just left click, right click. It didn't continue down because we have this extra vertex here. So we're going to go to Edge Select, select this edge, do Subdivide, go back to Vertex Select and join these two edges, or join these two vertices by pressing J. So we have this. And then we're going to go back to Edge Select, select these two edges, do Subdivide, click on this edge, press Q to Edge Slide, and then go back to Vertex Select. We're going to join these two by pressing J. We're going to join these two by pressing J. And I'm going to take a look at my reference. So I think this goes this way, all these go this way to start that curve, and this one connects to this one. So press J, select those two, press J, select these two, and then press J, and then we need to get rid of this extra edge, so we're going to go to Edge Select, select this edge, press Delete, choose Dissolve Edges. So now we have the edge flow that we're looking for here, where they're both coming down like this, and both of these lines are coming down like this. So it looks a bit nicer, but we still have like this stuff down here to fix. So we're going to do Control R, add in a loop cut on the bottom down here, just left click, right click. I'm going to select this vertex, press G twice, and center it a bit better, and then join it to this newly created edge loop. And we're also going to get rid of one of these lines because we don't want both of these lines. It'll make it look like there's the continuation of this wheel arch. So we're going to Alt right click on this, press Delete, choose Dissolve Edges. Now we have an end gone here. To fix that, we're going to do Control R, add in a loop cut, left click, right click, and then join these two. And you still have this little triangulation effect. If we bring this higher by pressing G twice, that will reduce but not eliminate that effect. But it does reduce it to some extent. To reduce it a bit more, we might have to reposition these. So you can mess around with this and try to improve it. This area in general is just pretty difficult to get looking nice just because of the amount of extra geometry we're adding. It's really messing with the shading. So another thing we can do is try to correct some of this shading. So we can just select these edges, do subdivide, Alt right click on this newly created edge, Q to slide, bring it in nice and close, and then you can join these vertices just as we've done before on the bottom and the top. So that's the basics of this. The other thing that I considered changing was this, how it's kind of pointy right here, and it doesn't really line up with these. Like this part's more curved than this wheel arch is at this point, because we have 2 points here and 1 point here. So one thing you can do is just select this with Alt right click, and you can do Control B to do a bevel, and then you can merge these points at last. So select one, Shift select, Alt M at last, and then you'll have curvature here on the wheel arch that better matches the curvature here. So that's one option that you can do, but it does kind of make this like a little straighter than the rest of it. Like the rest of it's more jagged, so it depends on what you prefer. Like you can try to move these a little to try to bring back some of that jaggedness so that it better matches with the rest of the wheel arch. To fix some of these other areas, I used a different technique. A lot of times I like to move vertices by themselves, manually, but there are some functions that can help you correct some of these shading issues, and we're going to just switch to face select, and I'll show you one way that you can use Blender to try to help you correct some of these shading issues. So basically what you want to do is select some of the areas where you're having shading issues. Like we have a shading issue here, so this polygon is giving us trouble. This polygon's also giving us trouble, you can see, and over here is also giving us a little bit of trouble. So we're going to select this one at a time. We're just going to select this face, we're going to press W. That'll bring up the specials menu. And one of the special options is to use smooth. which will flatten the angles of the selected vertices. And by doing that, it can help improve the shading. So this is what we have now, which looks pretty good. If I do Control Z, that's what we had. So we have this dark shading that doesn't look good, and once we do the smooth by pressing W and then choosing smooth, you can see that it looks a lot nicer. So you can use Blender's mathematical functions to try to help you correct some of these issues if you're having trouble doing it by hand. The only problem with this method is it is going to move your vertices. So if I do Control Z, like that's not working. Okay, there we go. You see where the vertices started, but when we smooth it, this is where they're ending. So the only problem with that is that now this is curving downward when it's supposed to be straight. So we do have to reposition this vertex again by moving it up and back into position. So it can correct your shading issues, but it can give you issues in other ways. So it sort of corrects one problem and creates another. So it's not always the best option. Like, we're gonna have to move this closer again, because you see like this edge is supposed to be close here. So we're gonna do G twice and move it close again. I'm gonna do the same here, just do G twice and move it close again. And now that we did that, you can see the problem kind of comes back a little bit, but it still looks better than what it did originally. So even though we didn't correct it entirely, it's still an improvement over what we had, so it's worked out well for us in this case. So we still have these polygons to work with, so we're going to do the same thing. Go to Face Select, select this, press W and smooth. Again, it's going to mess up your vertices, so every time you're going to have to reposition them. That's part of the reason I don't use this very often, is because you are going to have to reposition all of your vertices again, and it can be a little tedious or a little annoying sometimes. Like this one is going to have to be moved over here again. But in cases where you're really having problems with the shading, this is one of those options that will help you correct it without having to think too much. If the manual option's not working very well, this will give you a different option to at least try it and see if you can fix things by doing it this way. So this one's really given us some trouble at this point. So you can just go through and just keep doing this, try smoothing it. And you can do smooth multiple times and you'll see how it changes. It continues to try to smooth it. And you can even do multiple faces at a time, so if you wanted to do multiple faces, you can do multiple faces and then reposition your vertices. Just try to remember where your vertices started in the beginning and try to move them back to a similar position without messing up the shading too badly. For some reason I'm not able to get this to be correct. But one thing I did to fix this area actually was to add in some more edge loops. Or just, I just selected like this one I think and did subdivide. And then selected this vertex, slided it down, and joined it to this one, and joined it to this one. And that just contains the bad shading because we weren't able to fix it in any other way. Doing it this way kind of helped us contain the shading, the bad shading, rather than eliminating it. So this looks a lot nicer. You can still kind of see that little square problem that we had, but it's a lot less than it was. So this is another way of doing it, is to just try to contain the shading rather than correcting it. And we've used that a lot, like down here as well. So those are a couple different ways to try to correct the shading, so just keep doing that until you get a nicer result. I was able to get a pretty good result here. So I'm probably going to stick with this, and I just used similar techniques. There's still kind of a problem here, but getting this to be absolutely perfect is really not going to be simple. But I think I'm going to stick with this version instead of playing around with this. So you can just do the best you can, get the shading to look the way you want it. Continue moving vertices by themselves if you need to, like if you think this needs to move over maybe. That kind of made it worse in this case, but do whatever you think you need to do until you get a result you're happy with, and then go ahead and save. So go to File and Save.